Welcome back to English Class Collective.
Oh, yeah.
Today, we're diving into something that I think we all struggle with, and that's time management.
Yes.
You know, how to stop wasting time and actually get things done.
Yeah.
And don't worry, we've got all the key vocabulary listed in the video description so you can follow along easily.
Absolutely.
Now hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and let's get started.
It's a universal challenge, isn't it? Everyone feels the pressure of time no matter where they are in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, you sent over some really interesting articles and research on this very topic. I was particularly fascinated by the one about how different cultures view time.
Yes. That one is a real eye-opener.
Yeah.
It's easy to assume everyone sees time the same way.
Right.
But the reality is far more nuanced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we get to those cultural differences, let's start with the basics. We all have those moments where we feel like time is slipping through our fingers. What are some common time wasters that you see people struggling with?
Oh, procrastination is a big one, and it's more complex than just laziness.
Right.
Often it's rooted in fear of failure or perfectionism. Then there's the constant distraction of technology.
Right.
Social media notifications, the endless scroll.
Yeah, it's like our brains are wired for distraction these days.
Totally.
I know I'm guilty of that endless scroll myself.
The key is becoming aware of those traps and having strategies to combat them.
Okay.
One technique that's proven effective is the Pomodoro technique,
Okay.
working in focused bursts with short breaks in between.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
It's like interval training for your brain, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It helps to break down those overwhelming tasks and maintain focus.
Right.
Then there's the Eisenhower matrix, which is great for prioritizing. You categorize tasks by urgency and importance, so you're always working on what truly matters.
So we're talking about being strategic with our time,
Exactly.
not just trying to cram more into each day.
Right. It's about working smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Now, on that note of different approaches, let's delve into those cultural perspectives you mentioned.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Okay.
The research you shared talked about polychronic and monochronic cultures.
Right.
What's the difference?
Great question. Monochronic cultures like Germany or the US
Okay.
tend to value schedules, punctuality, and doing one thing at a time. Time is linear and segmented.
And polychronic cultures.
They see time as more fluid and flexible.
Okay.
Relationships and interactions often take precedence over strict schedules.
Interesting.
Think of countries like Italy or Brazil,
Okay.
where a meeting might start later than planned, but the focus is on building connections.
So it's not about being late in those cultures.
Right.
It's a different way of prioritizing.
Precisely. And understanding these differences can be crucial in a globalized world.
Right.
Imagine trying to do business with someone from a polychronic culture if you have a rigid monochronic mindset.
It could lead to a lot of misunderstandings and frustration.
Absolutely. And it highlights that there's no one right way to manage time.
Right.
It's about adapting to the context and respecting different cultural norms.
This is already making me rethink my own approach to time.
Yeah.
What else did you find interesting in the research?
Well, one study caught my eye.
Okay.
It explored how perceptions of time influence stress levels.
Interesting.
People who viewed time as a scarce resource
Okay.
tended to be more anxious and less satisfied with their lives.
That makes sense. It's like they're constantly racing against the clock.
Whereas those who had a more abundant mindset,
Okay.
viewing time as something that flows and regenerates, reported lower stress and greater well-being.
So maybe our attitude towards time is just as important as the strategies we use to manage it.
I think that's a powerful takeaway. It's not just about being efficient, it's about cultivating a healthy relationship with time itself.
That's such a great point. It's not about squeezing every last second out of the day.
Right.
It's about finding a pace that feels sustainable and fulfilling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about aligning your actions with your values and creating a life that feels balanced.
Speaking of balance,
Yeah.
let's talk about the practical side of things.
Okay.
You know, setting those boundaries and creating healthy habits.
That's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
There are so many techniques and tools available.
Right.
But before we dive into those,
Okay.
I'm curious to hear about your personal experience with time management.
Sure.
What are some of your biggest challenges?
Oh, where do I even begin?
Yeah.
I think my biggest struggle is staying focused.
Okay.
I get easily distracted by notifications, new emails, the sudden urge to reorganize my desk.
Ah, the allure of the shiny object syndrome.
Yes.
It's a common trap.
It is.
Especially in our digital age where distractions are constantly vying for our attention.
It's true.
Yeah.
But I've found that setting those digital sunsets you mentioned earlier has been helpful.
Okay.
Turning off notifications after a certain hour really does make a difference.
It creates a much-needed separation between work life and personal time.
And it reduces that feeling of being always on.
Right.
Which can be incredibly draining.
Yeah.
I've also started using a technique that I call the Sunday strategy.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this Sunday strategy.
Well, every Sunday evening, I take some time to plan out my week ahead.
Okay.
I schedule my most important tasks, block out time for focused work, and make sure I have time for exercise and relaxation.
That's a fantastic approach. Having a plan in place reduces decision fatigue during the week and gives you a roadmap to follow.
Yeah.
It's like setting yourself up for success from the start.
Exactly.
Right.
And it helps me to stay on track and avoid those last-minute scrambles.
It's a proactive approach to time management rather than being reactive and constantly putting out fires.
I've also found that batching similar tasks together helps me to be more efficient.
Okay.
For example, I'll set aside specific time slots for responding to emails or doing admin work rather than constantly switching between different types of tasks.
That's a classic productivity hack.
Yeah.
It minimizes context switching and allows you to get into a flow state.
And speaking of flow, one of the articles you shared talked about the importance of understanding our own energy levels.
Yes.
And working with our natural rhythms.
Absolutely. We all have times a day when we're naturally more focused and productive.
Right.
Trying to force ourselves to work against our natural rhythms can be counterproductive.
So are you a morning person or a night owl?
I'm definitely a morning person.
Okay.
I get my best work done before lunchtime.
Yeah.
My brain is firing on all cylinders, and I can power through my most challenging tasks.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm more of a late afternoon person.
Okay.
That's when I hit my creative stride.
Yeah.
Mornings are for coffee and slowly easing into the day.
That's perfectly fine. The key is to know your own rhythm and schedule your most demanding tasks for those peak productivity periods.
And to give ourselves permission to rest and recharge when our energy dips.
You've hit the nail on the head. Breaks are not a luxury, they're a necessity. They allow us to come back to our work refreshed and ready to tackle the next challenge.
And speaking of breaks, I'm ready for one myself.
Oh, okay.
Let's pause here and pick up this fascinating conversation in our next segment.
Sounds like a plan. We've got a lot more to cover.
All right.
So be sure to join us for part 2 of this deep dive into time management.
Awesome. See you next time.
Welcome back to English Class Collective.
It's great to be back, ready to continue our exploration of time management.
In the last segment, we talked about the importance of understanding our personal energy levels and working with our natural rhythms. It's about aligning our schedules to our peak productivity times.
And we also touched on the value of taking breaks, which is something I think a lot of people struggle with, myself included.
It's easy to get caught in the productivity trap, feeling like we need to be on all the time. But the research is clear, taking regular breaks actually boosts our focus and creativity in the long run.
It's counterintuitive, isn't it? You'd think working nonstop would be more productive, but it seems the opposite is true.
Our brains aren't designed for sustained, intense focus. They need time to rest and recharge, just like any other muscle in our body.
So what's the best way to approach breaks? Are we talking about stepping away from our desks every hour? Taking a full hour for lunch?
It's going to vary depending on the person and the type of work they do, but a good rule of thumb is to take a short break every 50-60 minutes. Stand up, stretch, walk around, look away from your screen.
And those breaks shouldn't be spent scrolling through social media, right?
Ideally not. The goal is to give your mind a true break from the task at hand. Go for a walk outside, listen to some music, chat with a colleague, meditate, anything that helps you to disconnect and recharge.
I like the idea of incorporating a quick mindfulness exercise into a break. Just a few minutes of focused breathing can make a big difference.
Absolutely. Mindfulness practices are a fantastic way to reduce stress and improve focus. And they don't require a lot of time or special equipment.
You know, we've been talking a lot about individual strategies for time management, but I'm curious to hear your thought on how this plays out in a team environment.
That's a great question. Time management in teams adds another layer of complexity, but it's also where a lot of efficiency can be gained or lost.
So what are some key things that teams can do to better manage their time together?
Communication is key. Clear expectations, shared deadlines, and regular check-ins are crucial. Everyone needs to be on the same page and understand their roles and responsibilities.
And it's not just about delegating tasks, it's about making sure everyone has the resources and support they need to complete those tasks effectively.
Exactly. And just like individuals need to be aware of their peak productivity, times teams can benefit from understanding the energy flow of the group as a whole.
So scheduling brainstorming sessions for when people are most creative or tackling those more mundane tasks during lower energy periods.
That's the idea. It's about being strategic with your collective energy. And don't underestimate the power of a shared team calendar.
It seems so basic, but I've been on teams where that simple tool made a huge difference in coordination and avoiding scheduling conflicts.
It keeps everyone in the loop and prevents those frustrating reply-all email chains trying to find a meeting time that works.
And just like with individual time management, breaks are important for teams too.
Absolutely. Encouraging regular breaks, even just a 5-minute stretch or coffee break together, can boost team morale, creativity, and communication.
You know, it's interesting how all of these time management strategies ultimately tie back to mindfulness.
I completely agree. Whether we're talking about individual habits or team dynamics, it's about being present, aware of how we're spending our time, and making conscious choices that align with our goals.
And that awareness extends beyond just work tasks, right? It's about being mindful of how we spend our leisure time as well.
You're spot on. We need to be just as intentional with our downtime as we are with our work time.
It's about carving out time for the things that truly recharge us. Spending time with loved ones, engaging in hobbies, pursuing creative passions, or simply relaxing and enjoying some peace and quiet.
It's about finding that balance between productivity and restoration, and remembering that time is a finite resource.
It's the one thing we can't get back, so it's precious.
Which brings up an important question. What are we choosing to do with our time? Are we spending it on activities that drain us, or are we investing it in things that bring us joy and fulfillment?
That's a powerful question to reflect on. It's easy to get caught in the autopilot of daily life and not really examine how we're spending those precious hours.
And that's where journaling can be a valuable tool. Taking a few minutes each day to reflect on how we've spent our time can help us to identify areas where we might be wasting time or where we could be making more conscious choices.
It's like holding ourselves accountable to our own time goals and aspirations.
Exactly. And it can be a powerful motivator for making changes and creating a more intentional life.
You know, this conversation has really gotten me thinking about the bigger picture of time management. It's not just about checking off tasks or being efficient. It's about crafting a life that feels meaningful and aligned with our values.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Time management is ultimately about living a life that we're proud of.
And creating a legacy that reflects our passions and priorities.
We all have the same 24 hours in a day. It's what we choose to do with that time that truly matters.
This has been such an insightful conversation. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on time management.
Me too. It's been a fascinating journey.
I'm sure our listeners are eager to hear more about specific techniques and tools for effective time management.
We've got plenty of those to share. Why don't we take a short break and come back for our final segment?
Sounds like a plan. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to English Class Collective.
And to part 3 of our deep dive into time management. We've covered so much ground already. We have, from personal strategies and cultural differences to the importance of mindfulness and breaks.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind of insights.
But now it's time to get down to brass tacks.
Yes.
And talk about specific techniques and tools that our listeners can use to actually implement these ideas in their daily lives.
I'm excited to share some practical tips.
Me too.
Yeah. Let's start with something you mentioned earlier, the concept of digital sunsets.
Okay.
Can you elaborate on that a bit more?
Absolutely. A digital sunset is essentially setting a time boundary for yourself when you disconnect from technology, especially work-related tech.
So turning off those email notifications, silencing your phone, putting away the laptop.
Exactly. It's about creating a clear separation between work time and personal time, which is so crucial for preventing burnout and maintaining a healthy work-life balance.
I've been trying to be more disciplined about this myself.
Yeah.
And I have to say it makes a huge difference in my stress levels and overall well-being. It's amazing how just a few hours of tech-free time can help us to recharge and reconnect with ourselves and the people around us.
And it allows us to be more present and engaged in whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
Whether it's spending time with family, reading a book, or simply enjoying a quiet evening at home.
Now, another technique that I find incredibly helpful is time blocking.
Okay, this sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Time blocking is essentially scheduling specific blocks of time in your day for certain tasks or activities.
So it's like creating a visual roadmap for your day.
Exactly. You're literally blocking out chunks of time in your calendar for things like focused work, meetings, creative projects, exercise, personal appointments, even downtime.
That sounds like a great way to ensure that you're making time for everything that's important to you.
It is. It helps to prevent those important but non-urgent tasks from getting squeezed out by the daily grind.
And it also helps to reduce decision fatigue
Yes.
because you've already made those choices about how you're going to allocate your time.
Right. You're not constantly asking yourself, what should I be doing right now? Because you've already made that decision.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
I think decision fatigue is something that a lot of people underestimate.
It's a real energy drain. And the more decisions we have to make throughout the day, the less mental bandwidth we have for those important tasks that require focus and creativity.
So by planning ahead and blocking out our time, we're essentially freeing up our mental energy for the things that matter most.
Now, speaking of planning ahead, one of the most classic time management tools is the humble to-do list.
Yes, the to-do list.
Yeah.
A staple of organized people everywhere.
But even with something as simple as a to-do list, there are ways to make it more effective.
Like what?
Well, for starters, instead of just jotting down a random assortment of tasks, try to prioritize them based on importance and urgency.
So using a system like the Eisenhower matrix we talked about earlier.
Exactly. That way you're always focusing on the most crucial tasks first.
And I've also heard it's helpful to break down large tasks into smaller, more manageable steps.
Yes, that's a great tip. It can make those overwhelming projects feel less daunting and more approachable.
And each time you check off one of those smaller steps, you get a little boost of motivation to keep going.
It's all about creating that sense of momentum.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you said earlier about the importance of journaling as a time management tool.
Yes. Journaling can be incredibly powerful for gaining clarity and self-awareness around how we're spending our time.
Can you give our listeners some specific prompts or questions they could use in their journaling practice?
Absolutely. Here are a few ideas you can start with. At the end of each day, ask yourself, what were my 3 biggest wins today? Where did I waste time today? What could I have done differently? What am I grateful for today?
Those are great questions. I love the idea of focusing on both the positive and the areas for improvement.
Exactly. And by consistently reflecting on these questions, you'll start to notice patterns in your behavior and identify areas where you can make more conscious choices about how you spend your time.
It's about becoming the CEO of your own time.
I love that analogy. It's about taking ownership of your schedule and making decisions that align with your goals and values.
So to all our listeners out there, I encourage you to try out some of these techniques and tools and see what works best for you.
Remember, there's no one-size-fits-all solution to time management.
Right.
It's about finding what works best for your individual needs and lifestyle.
And remember, time management is a journey, not a destination.
It's an ongoing process of learning, experimenting, and adjusting.
So be patient with yourself, be kind to yourself, and celebrate your progress along the way.
Absolutely.
And most importantly, don't forget to make time for the things that truly matter, the things that bring you joy and fulfillment.
Because ultimately, time management is about creating a life that you love.
And making the most of every precious moment.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into time management. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Likewise, it's been a great conversation.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below telling us about your favorite time management tips and techniques.
We'd love to hear from you.
Until next time, happy time managing.